Everything's recording.
Okay. Let me turn the seat more towards Chandra. Because you can see me reading. Gosh.
He's so self-conscious.
I'm terrible at this
It's
stuff.
great. I
I'm
saw the
terrible at
first
this
one you
stuff.
guys did that you posted. It was awesome.
We just posted Missy and Fred's episode.
Oh, nice. Oh, I want to watch
this
it.
morning, yeah.
Nice.
Or last night.
You talked about wine with them too?
Yeah. They're into it. It was more like a fun talk story. We talked a lot about wine shaming, which was I thought a pretty relevant
That's
topic
funny.
because
That's
it's
funny.
super. It is.
Let's talk about this online.
Okay. So.
Ready?
Yep.
Yep.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. I'm Chuck Furuya. And the creator, the mastermind, the genius behind this podcast is Kale Furuya.
Thank you. And then our guest today is Chandra. And after that first episode that you and I did together, we wanted to bring on a guest of the week that has something profound to share, either with wine or service, or just talk story, about things that are important in our industry. And
From different perspectives. Chandra provides a whole nother spectrum. In case you don't know, Chandra's one of the very top mixologists in our state of Hawaii. She's changed the game. She and a few others, they've completely changed the game in Hawaii, and rightfully so. I mean, she's an expert, I think, in creating drinks. And such imagination at the same time, even with the names that she comes up with. She's so imaginative, so ingenious, and she's a big personality in terms of hospitality. She's just so gracious and she's welcoming, and I thought it'd be really interesting to hear what she has to say first about mixology, and then maybe a little bit about wine, because she is exposed to wine, and I know she enjoys wine as well. So I thought this would be a very different perspective to learn from. What do you think?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
So Chandra, when you started off in the restaurant business, how old were you?
I was 15 years old
And where did you start at?
at Kincaid's. It's no longer there. It was in Ward Warehouse, and I was a hostess back then.
Yeah. And then you moved on to...
I moved on to CPK after that.
Yeah.
And I spent 4 years at CPK, also at the same time at Kohala Mandarin at the time. And then
Did you work with Cheryl?
she was there, yes, but I was in banquets because I was on the weekends at Kohala, during the week CPK, going to school full time.
Wow.
So I would see all the fabulous, fancy Hoku's people
My wife
that would
Cheryl.
get ready in the locker room, like, oh, what it would be like to be a server at Hoku's. But I'm in banquets, so it's okay.
So when did you know that mixology would be something that really would grab you and make you want to go down that road?
So, I mean, it kind of happened on accident, to be honest. I just bartended to put myself through school. And then I always thought it was just a great way to pay the bills, cash on hand. And then I graduated. I got my MBA, and I opened a wonderful little restaurant called Vino with you. And that was so much fun. And then when I graduated, I went into finance, and I was miserable. And I saw you. I came in like a couple times, and you're like, "What are you doing? You're not happy." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not happy. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm working like 17-hour days, like at a desk, and it's just not me." And you're the one that told me you should go talk to Warren and see what he has for you.
So Warren Sean is...
He is the executive GM of Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits of Hawaii.
Right.
So from the time that you were at Vino's, after you left Vino's, you were working in an office?
No.
No.
She went to Sansei for a while in bartending.
Yep, I opened Sante.
She
with
also
Ivy.
opened that nightclub.
Pearl Ultra Lounge. Yep.
Yeah, Pearl Ultra Lounge at top of Ala Moana Shopping Center. It was a really happening club. And then you also you did a lot of gigs here and there, right?
I did, yeah. Bar 35, like lots of different types of bars and
Which was like the
fine
spot
dining.
in Chinatown
Yeah.
for a really long time.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, she
Yeah.
was honing her skill. I mean, the Pearl was so happening, and, her bar would be full. So, it's one thing to make a drink for one person, and that's a great skill. You look at Justin Park, he's world class at that. But it's also, that's just one segment of mixology. The other one is to be able to do for 400 screaming people.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's a whole nother skill. It's just like chefing. You can come up with this plate that has 22 touches, but to also have the skill, also not instead of, also have the skill to do plates for 400 people. You know, that's a different set of skills. And so she really honed her craft at all these different bars.
What was your first bar gig?
I think it was Tiki's actually. So that was like such a different style because that's like Waikiki, pina coladas, you know, all day, just slinging drinks as fast as you can. You learn just from the guy that came before you, you know, that has all the worst skills in the world, but it works. It works exactly. It's just like simple, fast.
I gotta say too, blended drinks is an art.
It is.
That's what we do a lot of at Buzz's, you know, and it has to be the perfect amount of, like pina colada, for example, has to be the perfect ratio of ice to alcohol to a little bit of pineapple juice to the fat from the coconut cream. Otherwise, it's gonna be watery or icy or too thick. Yeah.
Yep. So exactly. So all those little experiences at different bars kind of help to, I guess, just prepare me for what I would eventually do at Southern.
Which is what?
Which is, I'm the director of mixology now. So I get to create cocktail programs for hotels and restaurants across the state. And it's been the most rewarding, just satisfying job. And I have the best boss in the world who encourages me to learn more, to challenge myself, get education, like go to these, you know, different cocktail, like, well, when there was Tales of the Cocktail and, you know, Bar 5 Day, I just did that right before COVID hit. So
what is Bar 5? Maybe you can explain.
Yeah, so Bar 5, gosh, that was the most challenging experience of my life in this career. And it's basically so many of the greats in our industry, like Andy Seymour, David Wondrich, who's a cocktail historian, Doug Frost.
Who's a master sommelier, master of wine.
Yes.
And a mixologist?
No.
Master sommelier, master of wine. He's one of few people to have both titles.
Yes. Paul Packelt. These are all like basically super tasters in our industry, and they're the ones that like lead the spirits tasting competitions, and they're just downloading all of this knowledge all day long. It was like 10 hours of like sitting classroom style, tasting, hundreds of spirits, blind tasting, being able to like pick up the different nuances and then being tested on that later on. Wow. Not only written, and it was like a 12-page written exam, but also practical, seeing your skills, like how you're making the cocktails, how you connect with the person you're making them for, you know, just your... the way that you're clean behind the bar, all of that. They're looking at everything. So just to pass that is huge because they don't pass everyone. Like you pay a lot of money to go to New York, take these classes, and you're learning a ton, but the pressure and just the amount that you're learning in such a short amount of time is intense. So they have only like I think a 40% passing rate. So when you look around at who's sitting next to you, you're like, oh my gosh, are you going to pass? Are you going to pass? Am I going to pass? Oh my gosh. It's like a lot of pressure, but I like that.
So it's just another certification as a bartender.
And also a learning opportunity because it's one thing to be a something in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing when you go take the Master Sommelier exam or Bar 5 because you're playing with.
So what do you learn in something like Bar 5 specifically? Like,
oh gosh, you become a lot more well-rounded as far as just your spirits knowledge. Yes.
More complete, in depth.
And you're pushing yourself like to the limit, you know, and even for people that have been in this industry for so long, global brand ambassadors, they're in the class with me, and it's humbling because you're never really put on the spot. Like sometimes it's just like luck that you get these amazing gigs and you're like, woohoo, look at me. I have the expense account and I get to travel the world and go to these, you know, cocktail fairs and whatever. And then you're put on the spot in front of everyone. You know who passed, who didn't, like how you're doing in class, and
who's got game.
Exactly. So the truth kind of comes out, you know, and that's kind of scary to be put on the spot like that. You're like, do I have what it takes? Do I actually have it, or is it fluff? And
so how did like, just to like maybe talk about your trajectory of your career, how do you go from like Tiki's to then like where you're at now? What happened along along that way to where like, first of all, like how do you go from being a bartender to now being able to create your own cocktails? Because that's tough.
It is.
You know?
It is. And people ask me that all the time. A lot of the inspiration for me happened when I met Francesco Lafranconi, who used to be our national director of mixology for Southern.
Out of Las Vegas.
Yes, he's out of Las Vegas. So now he's not with Southern anymore. He runs Mr. Coco in the Palms. And just his passion, it's so much like you, Chuck, but for cocktails, you know, he's just so passionate, and it didn't matter about, you know, how much time it was going to take to prepare something, or he wanted to go to the farmer's market as soon as he would come to Hawaii and just get inspiration from what he saw around, and just the way that he took everything in and really was thoughtful and intentional about it. That is what stuck with me. So when I got to be trained by him, it was like, it was the first time that I saw someone moving and really just breathing his passion into the cocktails and what he was doing. And it wasn't just a drink. It was like a piece of art. It was a part of himself. It was something that he invested in and really thought about. And that's when it changed for me.
You know, and I'd like to ask a question before we move further. So why was Doug Frost involved with Bar 5? What did he offer to the learning experience?
I think it's the way that he tastes, and also he's really into history as well, and just making sure that the right story is told, and that there's no pretension. And wine has so much to do. It's not just spirits. I mean, everything's all connected, you know? So it's not like, oh, just because he's a wine guy, he can't be involved. We definitely need to know about wine. And I mean, but that takes so much to learn all of that. So, I mean.
And like you said, his like palate is, I mean, it's world class, right? So like, and then to me, like there's a lot of like theories and ideology from studying wine that you can apply to not only mixology, but anything that you do in life, how much work it takes to get to that level.
But let me say this, which is going back to what she was talking about, Bar 5 and all these things, is that there's a lot of people who talk the story. But Doug Frost is one of those guys that walks, you know, he doesn't just talk. And I think that's also permeates to, I mean, or refers to Chandra as a professional. There's a lot of people that talk, but who walks, right? So one of the vivid memories I hope you have growing up in this industry, I asked you to polish glasses whenever we had a kaiseki dinner or whenever we did fancy tasting. And who would you be polishing glasses with?
So let me tell that story. My first run-in with Chandra was when they had just opened up Vinos together. Dad and Chandra just opened up Vinos together. And he'd pay me $3 for every rack of wine glasses that I would polish. And I was like maybe like 10 or 11 years old. I'm like, this is bullshit. Like I just don't understand like what, you know, it was late at night and I was back there by myself more often. But then you came and we would play this alphabet game from A to Z, and you would have to name an animal for every alphabet. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I do remember that because I saw you back there and you looked so bummed. I'm like, oh, let's make this fun. Let's play a game. Like, let's do something. It's like the Mary Poppins in me, I guess. I'm like, let's play something. And you like instantly lit up. You're like, okay. And then as soon as I turned the corner and then help you polish a little while and we play, you're like just lit up. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's okay back here.
Well, and then I come to find out that when you guys had opened, it was only you, Chandra, Dad, and Cheryl on the floor. Right. And then you still had the time, or at least like the organization to make time to go do that, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
to
good
me,
thing
you know?
Chuck was watering on my table so I could talk story with you in the back.
So the point of the story is you could see she took pride in polishing glasses. She knew the necessity of that as part of your core values. And I think that's what separates her also, in addition to that, to many mixologists or bartenders today, is her preparation, her core of values and all that stuff. So I think hopefully that was you come full circle now and you understand the value of that exercise, right? So Chandra, now moving into mixology, like maybe you can share with us, what are some of your favorite, or is there a favorite base spirit that you like to work with?
Yeah,
It's a great question, by the way.
It is. I don't necessarily have a favorite, to be honest, because I mean, there's just so many different applications for each spirit, and there's different types of spirits in each category as well. You know, like every Blanco tequila is so vastly different. So then they would all have different applications. And I do love tequila, but it's not like my favorite thing to work with. It really depends on my mood, who I'm creating for. Like everything I do, I really try to tailor it to the experience of my guest. It has nothing to do with me. And I learned that early on. Like when I first started and I learned from Francesco, he's all about everything has to be fresh and beautiful and perfect, you know? And then I would try to go into these super busy union hotel bars like the Sheraton or, you know, Moana or even like someplace like Duke's. And they're not going to hand press lemon and lime to order a la minute. Like that's not happening. And I'm like, well, this is what you need to do because this is what's the best thing. And then it wasn't working. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, okay. I finally figured out, okay, it's not about me. It's not about me pushing my agenda or what I think is the best on them. It's about tailoring it to their needs. What's going to work? Maybe we need to do fresh pressed juice before the shift so it can be in a squeeze bottle, so it can be really easy, so we can do quality but with ease of execution. So I started coming up with this list of questions every time I would go to an account and talk to their managers or F&B directors, like realistically, how many touches can we have in this cocktail? If it has to be 3, we're going to make it 3. We're going to make it work. Do you want to work with your existing inventory? Do you want to bring in new things? Do you want to be crafty? Do you want to do big ice? Do you want to do just the ice that you have? And just working with them to tailor it to exactly what they needed at the time, at that moment, because I'm a resource. It's not about, Chandra mixologist. It's about giving them what they need.
So if
That's
I could
functional
just,
too.
if I can just say it's the same path as wine. So to say only tequila or whiskey, it's like saying only Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, or Pinot Noir.
Exactly.
And so, and if you look at every category, from where Chardonnay from where? You know, this Burgundy that we're having right now is very different than anything from California. You know, because it's limestone driven.
Cheers.
And it's the same thing with Cabernet Sauvignon. It's the same thing with Pinot Noir. And then you get the winemaker involved, and it's completely different. It's no different with tequila. It's no different with the Scotch whiskeys, etc. Every bottle has a different story, has a different journey of getting there. Right? It's no different. And then the second thing that she's addressing is like wine, right? I mean, in terms of wine, it's like I go into an account and it's a neighborhood restaurant like Buzz's, for instance. You know, they're not going to sell what Vino sells. And Vino ain't going to sell what the Halikulani La Mer sells.
Right.
And whatever. So for me to create a wine list or a wine program, or in her case, a drink program, you know, that's going to fit all 3 of the above, you're not really thinking of what's best for the account.
Right.
You're just trying to show off what you know, what your expertise is. It's no different.
I think that it also pertains to what you guys talk about, like what both of you talk about, you know, you have a extensive like experience in mixology and cocktails, and he has a lot of experience in wine. And even when you go up to a table or a guest and you have to evaluate where they're at, do they want like the show,
right?
Or do they just want Jack and Coke, or right? Or do they just want a table wine, or do they want the whole like, you know, experience of having a sommelier at their table?
Yeah, it's no
Absolutely.
different. Same field. It's just different aspects. She's, you know, talking about mixology, and I'm talking about wine. Same kind of expertise.
It's service at the end of the day.
Well, that's a separate subject. You know, the service is something I want, and hospitality is something different. But the very fact that she explores all these different types of liquors, and you know, for different reasons, and mixing them with different flavors, and her drinks also innately, or not innately, she works hard at making sure her drinks have balance. Why is that important for you? Balance.
It's just like when you're eating, you know, and in a glass of wine, you need that zen, that almost opposing flavors,
yin and yang.
Yin and yang, exactly, in order to find that zen, that
sweet spot.
Yes, exactly. And I just can't. I cannot bring myself to make a cocktail that's even if someone says, I want a sweet drink. It's like when they say sweet, they're thinking like fruity. They're thinking maybe even aromatic. They don't even necessarily know what sweet means. It doesn't have to be, 30 grams of sugar in a glass and like heavy cream. it can be refreshing, light, and balanced, but still sweet in their mind. So it's just making sure, creating that, again,
They just don't want that bite in it.
Right. They don't want to taste the alcohol or have like a straight martini in a glass.
So that, and that's the thing that I want to ask you about is like, if we're talking about balance, you know, with wine, when we talk about balance, it's seamless. It doesn't finish bitter or alcoholic or oaky or anything like that. But with cocktails, there are cocktails that are supposed to be spirit forward. So how do you play that balance of something that, like an old fashioned, like to me, I want to taste the alcohol and the booze, you know? So I want something a little higher proof that'll carry through the sugar and stuff. So how do you balance that in a cocktail? Something that you can still taste the booze, but is balanced.
Again, that's kind of like tailoring it to your guest, because it's knowing if that person wants a spirit forward cocktail or not. I appreciate spirit forward cocktails for sure, but I always have to ask the question, like, do you like it spirit forward? Do you want to taste the alcohol, or do you want something refreshing and balanced? And then just making it, or sometimes they want to have a spirit forward cocktail, but they don't want it to be boozy. And there's also a way to create that as well, using like different vermouths or aromatized wines in order to balance out the high proof spirits. So you're still getting all alcohol, but it's just done in a way that's a little more like feminine.
So like the other night at that dinner at Vino's, you had that sake cocktail.
Right.
And you wanted to fortify it a little bit more. So you added a little bit of gin or tequila to it. So that was your way of making it a little bit more spirit forward, but still balanced. And
well, I wouldn't call that cocktail spirit forward. It's just creating that balance, because I didn't want the sake to get totally lost by the ingredients, and I still wanted to have a little bit of that alcohol to come through, but just not too much. So it's just playing with the ratios as well, like more sake, less gin, a little bit of Italian slightly bitter vermouth to bring in all those different layers.
So that's a different exercise. So that's about pairing a drink to the food. So that's a completely different genre that she makes a composite of all these things, of her vision of what's going to go with that food. Okay, but back to the other point is that, you know, asking a customer whether they want spirit forward or something more refreshing, light and refreshed, it's no different than wine. You want a bold, oaky, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon, 98 point Cabernet Sauvignon, or do you want a light, refreshing, delicious, gulpable country Mediterranean white wine that's served at a bistro or something, and you know, and along the Mediterranean, you eat the food, you gulp the wine. You have to understand what the customer is looking for. You know, otherwise you are pushing your ego onto the customer. So that's a very valid question. So even for you, the listeners, you know, when you go to a bar or a restaurant and you want a wine or you want a cocktail, you should have lingo to explain to the server or the bartender what it is you're looking for. Spirit forward or something. I want something light, refreshing, you know, very well balanced to start off, something uplifting. So it just starts off my evening. So I am looking forward to the rest of the 5 hours I'm out, right?
Exactly.
I think those questions are very important. Even for you listeners, I think it's very, very important. So Chandra, having said that, you know, besides being spirit forward and light and refreshing, it's not so much in Hawaii, but certainly things happen affected, like seasons or moods, or conversations or outraging and partying. These are all considerations when
definitely.
It's no different with wine, Kali. You know, it's that thing. There's a wine for every occasion. There's a spirit or a drink based thing for every occasion. That's what a mixologist does. There's a beer for every opportunity. There's a sake for every opportunity. You know, we just got to make sure that the viewers understand the possibilities of questions to ask in search of enjoyment, whether it's spirits, sake, beer, or wine. Correct?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and so I think like for right now it's summer. So what do you imagine for something you want to drink for the summer? What kind of cocktail would you imagine?
It's the sessionable, like not super high alcohol, very refreshing, even sometimes hydrating. Like I like to utilize a lot of coconut water and kombucha like during these days, just because I don't like it to be so strong that you can't continue to enjoy cocktails for the duration of the day or night. So that's what I like to focus on during summertime.
So one of the young professionals came up with a lot of questions for me to ask you, and I sent you all those questions. And so one of the comments she made was that, you come up with all these cute little phrases or names for all your wines. So what's the purpose of that, first of all, and how do you come up with them?
Well, I mean, it's kind of an attention getter. So for the guests, they like to see like the names and like, oh, that's a fun name. Maybe I'll just try it just because I love the name.
Or something super catchy. They're like, that's so smart.
Yes, or relevant. Like if it's something that's like on trend or on point right now, that's just like a buzzword or,
The quarantini.
Right.
Did you come up with that?
No, I wouldn't do that. I know everyone's like, oh, are you going to like come up with COVID cocktails? Like I don't know, social distance Rita. I'm like, no, sorry. I'm not doing that. But a lot of the naming, I get a lot of inspiration from all different things, whether it be music or different flavors. But I use a lot of my background with my English degree, which is my undergrad. So that's why I do some writing for Star Advertiser as well. But just kind of using the knowledge that I've gained from when I was in college and reading.
Your MBA.
Yeah, well, yes.
So what are some examples of some names of cocktails that you have?
Gosh.
Just like a few, if, for people that haven't had a drink from you before.
The Chuckster.
Well, one cocktail that I did that's been like really popular from like Hawaii Food and Wine, people always ask like, oh, can you make that again? I think I called it like Turn Down for What? Like it had the PHO instead of like, and it was a pho based cocktail. Like I had like bean sprouts and Thai basil and a pho syrup. And at the time that song like it just came out. So everyone was like, yeah. I try to keep it like, fun and interesting, a little different.
So do you, when you come up with these drinks, do you also consider what kind of glassware should go in?
Mm-hmm. If I have the choice, absolutely.
How does that make a difference?
Or how do you determine that, first of all? Like when you're thinking of a drink, how do you determine, this would go nice in a highball or...
It depends on the style of cocktail. Like if it's usually like effervescent and like a long drink, you want something kind of like tall so that as soon as you see it, you're like, ooh, that's going to be like fizzy, refreshing, like almost like a lemonade kind of a look, And if you see something like neat, very austere, a very just like silky spirit in a glass, you're like, oh, that's probably going to, it kind of tells you, oh, that's probably going to be like a sipper. It's not like something I'm just going to down, So the glassware tells a lot about what you're about to drink. It's like presentation in food, When you look at it, you kind of already make an assumption based on what you see.
But she also, she's not only the person that makes that one drink for that one person. Her drinks she can do for quantity, a lot of people. So it's not 21 steps. She's very concise. She's very methodical. She's very, at Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, her lines are by far the longest. And I'm always yelling out to the crowd, hey, the reason why her lines are long, she takes so long to make her drink, man. And she looks at me, give me stink eye. But I have to warn them, man. But all joking aside, one of the young professionals also commented to me that you make these very adorable condiments or what do you call it? Garnishes.
Which is a skill. It's an art. That's another art form to finish the cocktail with, right?
And it's all about presentation. I think I learned that from my mother, like at a young age. Like you want to always, even if it's simple, you want it to present it beautifully. And it's a lot of times it's not ingredients that are out of the norm. It's something that you would use every day behind your bar, oranges, lemons, limes, but it's just the way that you cut it and present it and taking pride in it. It kills me when I go to a bar and you get the brown, slimy lime on the side of your glass. I'm like, would you drink this? Like, take a little bit of pride. This doesn't take long.
Too small to even squeeze.
Right, or dried out. Or, I mean, when I was prepping at Pearl for the shift, I would work like 14-hour shifts there sometimes because it was a club. And a transition from like a lounge where you're making these craft cocktails to order everything fresh, everything squeezed fresh. And I would come in 3 hours early, not even clock in, because I wanted to make sure that maybe I'm being selfish, but I wanted to make sure I had all of my me's like collected before everyone got there and prepped, like, so I was like set for the night. Everything is right.
It
at
sucks
my
to run out of
fingertips.
things in the middle of your shift, and it sucks to have to rush to finish prepping before you start. I hate that too. Yeah.
So I loved it. No one was there. It was quiet. I put some music on and just like do my jam, and like I just felt good. I didn't care that I wasn't getting paid. It was about like really prepping myself for the evening.
You know, that's really interesting too. At that time, what people don't understand, whether it's bartending or it's working as a server or working as a sommelier, you know, this one of the kids here that went to level 3 course in Dallas, Texas. When he came back, he said a very famous sommelier. There was 3 sommeliers conducting this class on service, and they're 3 of the very best. They're really top-notch people. And he said one of them began by walking around the room, and there was 150, 200 people inside this room. And he goes, when do you start getting ready for service? When do you start getting ready for service? When do you start getting ready? And people would say, while I'm showering, or when I'm combing my hair, when I'm driving to work. And then his comment was something, I'm sorry if I'm misparaphrasing, but something along the lines, you probably can't work at a restaurant. You know, service is something that you live. Yeah. It's like being a parent. You're not a parent just when your kids are in front of you.
Right.
You know, so that's why if you watch her, so she's like that. She's thinking about tweaking the garnish or the drink, or, you know, I want to talk about hospitality shortly. That's totally Chandra. And that's why, you know, we asked her to be on this podcast. I did this thing at a hotel on the Big Island, a 5-star hotel, you know, very upscale. And they were changing or revitalizing a concept of their fine dining restaurant. And so they brought Chandra and myself in to teach classes to these people. I didn't know Chandra was going to be there, but they flew me in to do this thing. And I walked into the ballroom and I saw Chandra in a separate room, because the ballroom was all these corporate people talking about, this is what we have to do. This is what we're going to do. And I was watching on the side room with Chandra, and she was sit there. She had her coolers, she had her limes and all these things. And she brought herself. And she was sitting there prepping herself for her class. And she was busy talking to everybody while she was doing it, you know, just like conversation, including everybody. This is how I peel my lime. This is why I do this. And she was all prep, so that when she went on stage, she was ready to go. Yeah. You know, and she did it effortlessly and meticulously, but effortlessly. She included everybody, was talking. And I came back and I told my wife, Cheryl, oh my God, you know, our daughter, I shouldn't say our daughter, you might get confused, but you know, she's from us. She's part of our family. And I said, you should have seen this girl today, man. That's what a professional does. They live it. They don't just talk it. And that's totally Chandra. And so on that, I'd like to then now discuss, besides garnishes and everything.
Wait. Before we get into hospitality, let's talk about ice.
Well, that's what I was going to move, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, because like before,
how do you segue from to ice from that? I'm like, oh my God.
Well, just before we go to sorry.
I was like, oh, okay, ice. Okay, yes, sure. Let's talk about ice.
So what are your thoughts on the importance of ice in a drink, especially now? You know, I think there's a rise in that being like how you said, take more time with a garnish, that you take more time with your ice. How important is that for you?
Oh, it's huge. I don't think Hawaii is quite there yet in realizing how important it is. It's very slow, and it's maybe only 10% of the bars out here that realize the importance of it, and how the dilution, it affects the way that you even handle yourself behind the bar. So I get asked so often, oh, how long are you supposed to shake a cocktail? Teach my bartenders, tell them they need to shake like 30 times. I'm like, well, that's not necessarily the case, because if you don't invest in nice hard ice, if you're shaking that cocktail with your soft half moon ice 30 times,
diluted,
you're not going to taste anything. Yeah. So you can't tell them that. And they're, well, you know, you have to like have showmanship. I'm like, yes, absolutely. But you also have to understand the ingredients you're working with. So ice plays a huge impact on the end product of your cocktail, and how it looks, how it tastes, sometimes even like the texture of it, all of that.
Presentation.
Yes, presentation.
So, and you know, there's that ice machine company that Pie and Jigger and all these bars have that produces the cubes, like maybe the smaller cubes.
Yeah,
how do you produce
Cold Draft or Hoshizaki?
Yeah. How do you produce the 2-inch or 2.5-inch ice cubes.
The clear ones.
Yeah.
So those, I mean,
Like
nowadays
commercially
you
on a-
either have to purchase your own Klein bell machine. So Klein bells are basically those machines that make those huge blocks that ice sculptors use, and then you have to manually break it down. Now there's also companies you can order from, like On the Rock Hawaii and Ice Cube Hawaii, small companies that have just given everything they've gotten to just elevating our ice programs here in Hawaii. But it takes a lot of dedication if you're going to do it on your own. And Klein bells these days aren't that expensive, but it's more the time, it's the labor and the love put into it, that you can't just like put it in a mold and expect it to be clear and beautiful. It has to, you have to take time working at it.
And you have to get your staff on board to upkeep that, right?
Yes.
Wow. So, any more questions on the ice?
No.
'Cause that's a big topic.
I think
for
that's
me.
a huge topic to me too.
I think it's very important.
I'm trying to start my own clear ice program at Buzz. It's just for the cubes.
Awesome.
I mean, we didn't want to invest in any machines, so I
Yes.
just bought
The cooler in the freezer.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
exactly.
You can do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. It just takes a lot of time.
But it only takes maybe 2 minutes per cooler.
Right.
But
2 minutes.
to cut.
Oh, to cut.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just mean like to freeze it,
Yeah,
and then you need
yeah.
the freezer space
Yes,
as well
yeah.
to hold it. But I mean, yeah, that's how a lot of people start. You just YouTube it, and you're like, okay, let's give this a go.
I know, but that should be only from some specialty drinks. When you're a neighborhood restaurant, like Buzz's, your neighborhood, do you really need these kind of ice cubes?
But even though we're neighborhood, it doesn't mean we can't do things
Right, exactly,
correctly.
exactly.
You know?
It's just him taking pride, which
Yeah.
is huge. He's taking
I
pride.
come in on my days off, like how you would come
Exactly.
in early, and I put on music and I'll
Yeah.
cut ice for 2 hours. You know,
It's very zen. Yeah.
it's like part, and then
it
you feel
is.
good. I go into work early as well, but
Yeah.
you feel good. I hate rushing, like I
Yes.
said, and I hate running out of things in the middle of my shift. So I like to spend the time to come in early
Right,
to
it's
make
worth
sure
it.
it's set up as well.
It's your mindset. That's
Yeah.
why. It's
Or-
the peace of mind that you get from
Well, it goes back
knowing.
to that story about you got to live it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like your preparation for work is not when you're only behind the bar, right? You gotta come prepared. You gotta come.
And like you said, it's not about making money. It's like I come in on my days off to cut this ice because it feels good to serve a guest and have the story. And I don't want the credit for it,
Right,
you know, but
right.
I want to know that we're doing things correctly.
Yes, you're taking pride in what you do, so that when you're giving them that glass, they're like, not everyone will notice, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's about
You.
taking pride. Yes,
Yeah. As a
exactly.
Professional.
Yes.
So Chandra, when we started this podcast, some of the changes that Cully has done. So he's now serving the wines. He jerry rigged this bucket and everything inside his beer cooler so that he can serve the wines at the proper temperature. And then he
Nice.
converted this gas tank I had of argon right now, but I'm sure he'll switch to nitrogen and with a little thing. So he shoots the wine down every night
Perfect.
to make sure that it stays as fresh as possible overnight while it's sitting there. So that's the purpose of this podcast, partly, is how can we affect change, right? So that's always, as you know, been a very important thing for me. So even for you, I can see you branching off in that direction. So like how I write the article for Star Advertiser, it's really about trying to affect change, getting people to go out there and try wines they normally wouldn't have tried, family owned, et cetera, et cetera. You also write for Crave. And what is your objective on that? Why do you do it? I mean, what do you get to say? How do you feel about all this stuff?
I don't know how many people even read the newspaper
That's
anymore.
how I feel too.
I think you'd be surprised on how many people do read your guys' segments.
It is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be in the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, you're the cocktail girl." I'm like, "Oh, wow, amazing! Like you're one of the 10 people that still read the paper."
That's how I feel.
But it's very flattering when people notice, or when they even tell me that they've tried some of my recipes, and or some people tell me they save all the articles. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. But my inspiration I try to just get inspiration from whatever's happening around me at the time and try to zone into what I feel the environment is like, and
or needs
yeah. exactly and try to tailor it to that, and then just bring a little bit of positivity and make it fun, so that it's not just like, oh, this is this cocktail and you need to know this, and I want to put a little bit of knowledge in there but still make it like fun and accessible for people that maybe don't ever make cocktails at home.
And along those lines, another venture you seem to be very involved with is establishing, or here in Hawaii, the United States Bartenders Guild of Hawaii. So what's that about?
Excuse me.
What is that, first of all?
So it is a national organization, nonprofit, and we founded the USBG in Hawaii, oh my goodness, like probably 12 years ago. And I was the vice president for many, many years. I not recently, maybe like in the last 4 years, I stepped down just because I'm in a different season of my life. Like the extra time that I would put into USBG is now given to my kids. I'm still involved, but it's a lot. It's a lot to do because you're not getting paid. It's really just to spread the passion of the craft to our fellow bartenders. And
locally too, right?
Locally, yes. But it is, because it's a national organization, you can go to
resources,
all different cities, and when you visit, you just reach out to your USBG fellow bartenders. Hey, I'm visiting. What bar should I come visit? And you already have a camaraderie that's already built because you're a part of this organization. And because it's all just like you pay your membership every year, you come to events, you get exposed to different like classes, workshops, pairing dinners. It's a wonderful resource for bartenders to kind of take it to the next level and network with people that maybe they're not at the same level with. Like maybe they can interact with Dave Newman or Justin Park and, really kind of tap into some of their secrets and what's gained them success over
Insights.
the years. Yes. And it's kind of an open book. Like Justin has done multiple classes on ice, or, Dave will talk about his barrel age program, and it's about helping one another, and it's not about being competitive. No, not at all. It's about really just building each other up so we can, so we can be more recognized as a bar community throughout the nation.
Right.
That's inspiring.
We used to have that in Hawaii too, with all the young guys. Back then, Mark Shishido, Kevin Toyama, Marvin Chang. It was Richard Field. It was a strong,
in wine, you mean?
Yeah. It was really a good time, and to a certain degree, we have some of that now. But there was like what you see with mixologists right now in Hawaii. It's just starting, so you see the strong core coming up. I mean, there was mixologists before and all. I'm not taking away, but there's this growing core of people. It's just truly remarkable. And so, having said that, let's segue into what I've been wanting to hear from you, because you're so good at it. I want to talk a little bit about hospitality, okay, and how important. First of all, how do you define hospitality from your point of view? And I mean, everybody says they're service oriented, they're people oriented. I don't know how true it is to the degree. I'd like to hear your perspective on all that. What does hospitality mean to you?
That is a tough question. I think for me, a lot of what I've learned has come from so many of the amazing mentors in my life, like you and Ivy and Francesco. And I learned so much just by watching your actions and learning from that, and taking the best parts of what I've seen from my mentors and then applying that to how it works in my life.
It's a composite.
It is. It's
a composite, a little bit from here, a little bit of there, a little bit of there.
All of your experiences.
And that's just like going to school. You learn that Julius Caesar did this and so and so. It's a composite of your values, of your core, yes?
Absolutely. Definitely. And then even experiencing different cultures and the way they approach hospitality, how they are in Japan, how they have this just genuine joy for service.
Yes.
Like they don't care who you are. They don't know how much money you make. It doesn't matter. They want to give you their best foot forward in service no matter what. And that was really inspiring to see.
Can I just interject there? One of the things that really blew me away about service in Japan, when Cheryl and I were there last, every single meal, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the server was at the door to tell us good night. So that showed me that the service wasn't built upon what's convenient for them. They made themselves available according to our needs or time schedule. That's service. Yes.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
then some of the other values for you?
It's really being able to read your guest and listen to them, not just, okay, I'm going to run through the specials and I'm going to tell you what I can do. And I have all this, experience. It's about listening to them because they don't know you. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it's about really making their experience special.
Genuine.
And help having them feel that care, that you really care for them while they're in your presence and you're serving them.
And I think what he talks about between you and Auntie Cheryl and Mark Shishido is that no matter how busy you guys are, it's like a duck and they're floating on their water or their feet are turning underwater.
She said that.
Yeah.
That was her quote.
No.
But like back to it is that no matter how busy you are, you can't make your guests feel that anxiousness. You have to curb it somehow, right? Like so that even though you have 10 other things to do, this is what you're doing right now.
Right. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that was how it was every single bar 35 verse Friday. It's tough. It's hard to do.
It's taxing mentally too.
It is because you have so much going on. It's just the multitasking. But I think, you get better and better. And I'm still learning, always growing. But I mean, that's definitely what we strive for, right?
So I don't know if you know this, but that whole comment about the duck, that was her response in talking about my wife, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Wow.
She's the best at it, man. She's amazing.
So gracious. You would never know that she's super busy.
No, or stressed.
Is that true?
Yes. She just
and
always
she's
has
so
this calm.
efficient. Oh, my God. She's like she's in control.
Look, she's lighting up right now. She's so happy.
Yes, it's so
Cheryl
true.
is something special on the floor. Her and Chandra working, I was just a water boy, man. I walked around with a water pitcher.
Yeah, right. I was just trying to keep up with you guys. Like it held me to another level, and it pushed me to get to that same level. So I was just lucky that you gave me the chance. Really,
it's reverse, Kelly. Believe
no.
me. Okay,
You're
so let me
humble.
say this. So how do you incorporate that hospitality behind a bar? When you're a server, you're talking to the table right here. When you're behind a bar, you're mixing and the customer's over there and seat number 4 is over there.
And you're doing something while you're talking to them.
How do you incorporate hospitality behind a bar?
It's that ebb and flow, and it's that multitasking, and you really have to do a million things at once. But it's kind of just like keeping that inner calm. And then knowing, like sometimes the guests, maybe they don't want to talk to you the whole time. And then, you have to read that as well. It's just making them feel comfortable wherever they're at.
But some guests do.
Yeah.
And some guests, every time you're pouring a drink, they're like, oh, what is that?
Yes.
And
so you have to be really good at telling short little jokes and you're like, ha, 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 and walk away.
Well, and then behind the bar, you don't have nowhere to hide.
No.
You don't have the server terminal, or you're not really, you're taking dishes to the back, but you have shit to do behind your bar. You're there. You're stuck,
Okay, so there's a lot of people, whether it's servers, bartenders, sommeliers, whatever. They're good at talking to people and whatnot, making little side comments. But how do you make it, you and Cheryl specifically, Mark Shishido is another one, you guys make it genuine. How do you do that? Does it just come from inside?
I think they're just genuine people to begin with.
It just comes from
I don't
somewhere
know
inside.
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
You see
I see it in Cheryl, yes. And that's, I think that's just how she is. I see it in a lot of people.
But you also don't see it in a lot of people.
But I think it
Yes.
goes back to what you guys
Absolutely.
talk about, hospitality and service, that it's a way of life. You either have it or you're just doing it right now for like the meantime.
Right. I mean, it's not like it's just behind the bar. It's when I have people at my home. It's
When you're at
serving
the
my own
grocery
children.
store,
It's
even.
Exactly. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Having that aloha,
Her husband recently posted, my wife, she's the most thoughtful, caring person I've ever met in my life. And that's a true statement. And for you listeners, so you understand the concept, imagine you walking into a restaurant and there's the host or hostess and they say, reservations tonight? Your last name? What time? How many people? That's correct. That's how you're taught. But how is that different than when your grandmother walks in and your eyes get big and your body gets big and everybody can feel that you want to go run over there and hug her?
And that's your first experience walking into the restaurant.
And that's hospitality, that genuine hospitality that she's great at. She's sincere. It's not put on. It's not, but it comes from a true belief, like living it as opposed to talking about it. You know, there's a lot of people that talk it, but Chandra is one of those special people that can live it. And that's why I wanted to make sure I heard what she had to say about hospitality, because I think it's an important message that needs to be communicated more and more, and especially nowadays. Okay, that's my thought.
But and I think, like, you know, talking about that, there's people that are in the hospitality industry just for right now. There's that time in, like, when you're like, okay, this is just for now, but now it's turning into like, this is what I'm gonna do forever, right? Or like, I'm happy doing this, and this is what I love to do. So there's that transition of, it's not just for now that this is, so now
it's not
I
just
have
rehearsed.
Yeah, now I really have to focus on making this a profession.
Yes,
right?
yes. What's going to set me apart? What's going to take me to that next level? And a lot of it is taking care of yourself too. I mean, I know a lot of bartenders have this, you know, you think that all they do is party and stay up all night, but there's a new kind of trend happening where all these bartenders and ambassadors that have been in this industry for so long are saying, hold up, it's not about drinking as much as you can. Like, let's be knowledgeable and let's be smart and let's take care of our bodies, because ultimately that's going to help you be a better person behind the bar. I mean, even the way that you think and you process things, your brain doesn't get so tired and
Or
bogged
not
down.
coming in hungover to work and be cranky.
Because-
or
Energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that goes to the guest experience too.
It does.
Yeah.
And when I remember the last time they came, what they drank, what they ate, what they liked, the guest like lights up and they're like, oh my gosh.
How do you remember that? Yeah.
Right. And then you have that instant connection, and then you probably have a new
Then
regular after that.
You're their favorite bartender, or one of their favorite bartenders
Exactly.
after
And it's
that.
such a minor little thing, but when you're programmed to be good at things like that, oh my gosh.
Or you're coming in fresh, and you're coming in well rested, and you didn't stay up all night getting hammered. Or,
Yeah, that's you know.
And that lifestyle will catch up to you.
Completely. Yeah.
People
you gotta
go down
be careful.
hard. Yeah. Especially if you're going to do this for the long term, right?
I can't be just like
Raging every night.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially you get cash in hand, you have your tips.
It's easy to do.
And you had a stressful night at work. It's easy to just go to a bar and get caught up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, or talk to your fellow employees about how rough the night was, and did you see table 5? Or oh my God, I served 5 of those large drinks with the and so it's just work talk. It's people would categorize it as detoxing after a hectic day of work, unwinding, right? So you gotta. There's a fine line between that and you rolling and you can't stop it. You know, that's the point. So
I learned
Chandra,
that at a young age. Once I get rolling.
God.
That's why I choose not to drink very much, you know?
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah. Okay. You know the one who doesn't drink, Chandra, is who?
You.
That's right. So hello. You're preaching to the preacher. Okay, so Chandra, so you educate a lot. So Cully, just so you're clear, when she became working for Southern, now today it's called Southern Glazers Wines and Spirits, her and Aaron, then Suzuki, now Sean, they changed the game. They made mixology and drinks for all the hotels and all these restaurants, and they upgraded the whole, liquor scene here in Hawaii. I mean, the two of them just spread the word. Kauai, Big Island of Hawaii, Maui, Lanai, all these, they just went in there and just upgraded, with this whole slew of different drinks and standardizing things so that it was easy to do depending on what you feel your customer wanted and what kind of drinks would be apropos for your type of dining or your type of experience, and seasonal and, given your workforce, giving your customers. They gave a methodology, a way of thinking, to many of the more successful programs throughout Hawaii. It was her and Aaron, it just changed the game, man. I mean, people talk about me changing the wines. These two changed the game completely on the liquor forefront. That's a true statement. Am I exaggerating?
You're kind. You're very kind.
Okay, so having said that now, Chandra, I'd like to ask you, what kind of advice would you give these young bartenders / young professionals, who are looking at this as a craft? What kind of advice would you give these younger people, so they could skip all the trials and tribulations that perhaps you and I had to go through,
I would say just to never stop learning and never stop challenging yourself, because the minute you think, oh, I'm it, man. I know how to do this. I can smoke a cocktail and make spheres. Like, no one really cares about that. So stay humble and never stop learning. Always, always challenge yourself. Taste, because you can't stop tasting. You have to always like put it out there so your palate is experiencing all these different things and growing and understanding what you're putting in the glass.
Yeah, and so Cully's bartending now at his family's restaurant, right? Buzzes. So he's feeling pretty confident about his abilities, So my question to him was,
they call it poetry in motion. Nah, just joking.
I love it.
So Chandra,
I'm totally kidding.
I gotta come to your bar.
Please do.
Oh yeah, I definitely
Chandra,
will.
so when he says things like that, my question to him always is, how long have you been bartending? He goes, about a year. 1 year.
It's okay. That's all right.
But I'm just saying,
yeah.
if you stop learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and right now, I feel like I always wanted to be a bartender or be behind the bar.
I never got
the opportunity to, like, at all the restaurants that I worked at, And now that I finally do, I like go home and I watch YouTube, at least a few things on YouTube about cocktails. I research ice. So like, to me, if we're giving, I mean, I'm not anyone to give advice to a bartender right now, but if we were talking about learning and stuff, there's just so many resources available.
Yes.
To
More
keep
than ever.
learning. Even if you have
Yes.
15 minutes on a break,
Right.
you can learn something.
Right.
Our dad puts it in as like, at least learn one new thing every day about your job. That's pretty doable,
And there's so many different categories to learn from too. From learning like the classics,
I
like
love the
reading all
classics,
the
yeah.
vintage,
Books and,
publications, yes. And then technique, like methods on doing things, making syrups, making
Garnishes,
tinctures, shrubs, all of that. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things to learn. And then there's all like the, learning about your spirits and what you're working with too. And it's not just like, oh, what's in the well or, what's on your back bar, but going beyond that. So
that's the hardest thing for me right now is learning the profiles of my spirits, because it's like, this
It's a
tastes
lot.
rough too.
it's a lot. Yes.
I mean, it's a high alcohol or liquor is all higher proof than a glass of wine.
Right.
So just
Right.
sipping on it, it's hard for me to distinguish right now at this stage of my career with not a lot of experience, how to distinguish this vodka tastes different than this vodka. I mean,
So my whole thing on that, it's no different than saying this Chardonnay tastes different from this Chardonnay, which tastes different from that Chardonnay.
but this is more palatable.
I understand, but I'm just saying there is a difference between three Chardonnays.
Yeah.
And so rather than going through the exercise only of you tasting and deciding for yourself, right? It's and especially since spirits have a higher alcohol, that's when you ask a resource like Chandra or Dave Newman, who you were talking to the other night, or Justin Park, who or people like that are really good in the industry, and have them explain the difference between this tequila and this tequila and this scotch. And so that at least you have a general idea. So even for me, Cully, when I travel around, if I'm talking to a master sommelier or I'm talking to a winemaker, that you asked me this about how do I find wines. So if I'm in an area and I think this winemaker is unreal, so before I leave, I'm going to ask him or her, name me 5 other wines of the area that you really respect what they're doing. And that's how I get leads. It's the same thing when I'm talking to a master sommelier. So I'm going to Sardinia. I ask all these master sommeliers and masters of wine and whoever, what are the wineries I should check out? And then I'd start doing research and I weed out, the things like that. That's how you use people as resources, to understand the difference between this tequila and that tequila or whatnot. That's a good way
Rather than testing it yourself.
because you might not be right.
Yeah.
You might be off on your palate because you've had 5 different tequilas, and so it's hard to do that stuff. I remember when I was
And
studying
your
for the
palate's
master
just getting hammered if you're tasting all
I
that.
remember when I was taking the master sommelier exam, part of it is spirits. And as you know, I don't drink. And when I did drink, it was for effect, not for, ooh, this scotch has peat. Like, I just was pounding. And so the whole point of that is that I was managing bag bowls at the time. The bartender would set up 5 cocktails, 5 liquors blind. And I would just have to, and I would have to wear a eye thing, so I couldn't even look at the color. And so I'd have to smell, and I had to learn how the difference between rum and vodka and scotch and bourbon and, gin were all different. And I can identify blind. And then once I got that kind of wire, then there'd be 5 kinds of gin. Or another time would be 5 times scotch. It's no different than
Would
mine.
you spit it out too?
Yeah. But I mean, your palate, it takes a pounding, but still, that's how you learn, And so the first step I should have done then, we didn't have really mixologists back then, but I should have gone to someone like Chandra and asked her the difference between all the gins or all the different, so that I save myself a little bit of time, and then I smell the difference between, but it has to be someone that really is into it.
Yeah.
And I can therefore learn to smell, oh, this one has more juniper berries. This one has, and that's how you could discern, the difference between all the different spirits. And the other thing I want to say, excuse me, is the other part that has to be worked on is the whole hospitality thing that we talked about. You may be the greatest bartender in the world, technique-wise, knowledge-wise of the spirits, but if you're making a drink, but if you can't connect with the customer, what difference does it make?
Exactly.
And so I think there needs to be homework done on that front. And so
Or homework on all fronts if you're gonna keep learning, right?
To be complete. So I learned this from Reiner, who used to run Roy's. When he goes out to eat, when most restaurant people go out to eat, they sit there and they pick apart the restaurant. The bread was 5 minutes late. The guy didn't read water. The guy didn't do this thing. That's what restaurant people do. They do. They just nitpick the thing to death. The perspective he always took is, what do they do well? And how can I incorporate that to what I do? That's what she does. That's what Cheryl does. They look at the things that are good, and how can I incorporate that to what I do? So learning doesn't always have to come from books and computers and et cetera, et cetera. It's every time you go out a lot to food restaurants. What do they do well?
But I also like to also notice the things that they don't do well and incorporate. I don't want to do that when I work.
And it's a good mental check. Like,
not to be negative.
No, it's true.
But you just want to know what you don't like.
Yeah, it's like you experienced it as a customer, and you don't want to have your customers experience that.
To me, that's almost just as important as noticing what people do well. Is like me as a customer, when I go out, what don't I like, and I don't want to make my guests feel that way.
I think that's important, but I have to tell you, just less than a week ago, I was in Mapuna. My car had to get serviced, right? Jeez Louise, man, it took forever. Instead of 1 hour, it took 2 hours and 45 minutes, even though I was quoted 1 hour. So I had nothing to do. It's Mapuna, it's hot. Excuse me. So I went right around the corner to an L&L drive-in. They had the whole social distancing. There was one lady behind there, and she was quiet at first and whatever, and I didn't know what to order, so I just ordered. It was early in the morning, so I ordered omelet with their special omelet. And so I was sitting there eating, and all these people were coming and going when I was sitting there eating. And it was all regulars or people from the Mapuna, that whole working place. And you should have seen her talk to these people. You should have seen how she wiped out everything after they touched everything, and effortlessly so. It would be something like Chandra did or Cheryl did. And she just worked the whole little drive-in and personalized everything. And I took a picture of her and I posted it on Facebook because I was so inspired. That's hospitality. What she did was service. We're talking about an L&L drive-in, so it doesn't have to be something fancy.
Exactly.
She epitomized hospitality, graciousness, and welcoming, and from her heart. She did it from her heart.
It's the heart.
And I felt it, and I took a picture. I walked out, and I came back in after a while and took a picture of her. She goes, "No, I don't want to take a picture." She thought I was weird, and I took a picture. I said, "Please, you made my morning very special." I took a picture and I posted it because I said, "Thank you for re-inspiring me." That was hospitality and graciousness. So I think that's something that we all can work on.
Absolutely.
In our industry. So, Chandra, what did you think about that?
Oh, I think that's spot on. It's when I like going to bars where I don't know anyone and they don't know me, and I just kind of get to observe the bartender, and sometimes a lot of them will have tons of knowledge and just think that they're just like bartender of the year, but they have no heart, and they'll take your order, they'll make your drink, they'll put it in front of you, and then that's it. Like there's no interaction, there's no story behind it, there's nothing. And then you meet a young bartender who's hungry to learn and just hungry to give the best service ever. And it's those that you're like, man, I want to come back here and support that person. And then maybe even like drop some information on them or give them like helpful hints that can help them in their career because they're hungry and they haven't checked out. It's just all about heart. So I completely agree with that.
It's not just a job.
No.
It's about your mental space too,
Yes,
you know? Like we're talking about, if you're going to be in this industry, like how do you strive to be the best for one, and how do you not get to that place where you're checked out? Because you see it when you go out. You know?
So you guys both, you attended the dinner the other night and you were part of the dinner. Would you say Ariana's on that track of being genuine and welcoming, hospitality, sincere from the core, man? She is something else.
She kept going around the table and checking in on everybody, and
she's genuine. I mean, I'm very refreshed or re-inspired to be around someone like that. I think she has all the right reasons, and she's down this path. I hope she doesn't stop growing. You know, she's such a star, just like what I saw in her and some of these other people. You know, it's just she has that touch. I hope she continues. So we talked about spirits. We talked about mixology and whatnot. I'd like to segue into a little bit about wine. So first of all, let me ask you this, because I know you love wine. Every time you go out to dinner, you always enjoy wine with your dinner. So what do you look for in a wine? Is it like cocktails? Is it a mood thing? Is it who you're with and what kind of foods? A similar kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about like, where you are, what you're eating, who you're with. You also want to accommodate, you know, the what your guests like that you're dining with, and make sure everyone's happy. But I mean, my love of wine really started with you. Like, of course, you know, everyone likes wine. It's like fun to drink. But when you learn more about it and you really dive deep, and it was those late nights at Vino when you would pop open like 1989 wines that were like buried under the ground in cement demijohns, and I'm like, what? Like mind blown. I mean, you reach a different level in just understanding and experiencing. But you can, it's like when you read it on a paper, it's nothing like experiencing it firsthand. That totally didn't answer your question.
What about this? Did he ever wine shame you throughout your history of knowing each other?
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, many times. He's like, what? How come you drinking that? How come you brought that? You bring that into Vino? What's wrong with you? I'm like, it's my mom's favorite. Shut up. My mom's with me. Oh, okay then.
So at home, when do you look to enjoy wine? You have all this beer, you have all these cocktails that you can whip up in a snap. When do you look to enjoy a glass of wine?
It's usually like when I'm making dinner and just kind of winding down from the day, or when I'm like outside with my kids and they're playing around, and I'll just have like something refreshing and easy. And but I drink wine more than anything in my house, way more than spirits. I'd say I drink spirits like maybe 10% of the time.
But why wine? Why?
Because it's like just the feeling that I get when I have a glass of wine. It's relaxing, but you don't feel like you're so boozy, or it's, you know, you're going to get drunk. You can have just a little bit and enjoy it with dinner.
Take the edge off.
Yes. But it doesn't have to be like a commitment. Like you don't have to like have so much of it. You can just have a glass and then let that be okay. And just enjoy it. Or you can have 3 and still be standing up straight. Yes, that as well.
Yeah.
So Missy said on her podcast that if you start at 4 or 5, she wants to be up and alert to watch the 10 o'clock news by drinking wine. You know, otherwise you try to get there after some margaritas or some.
Oh yeah,
you're done.
Good night.
Yeah.
Forget it. Good night. Yeah.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. So, what was the aha moment wine for you?
There are so many. One? Yeah, there are so many of those.
What was the first one though that you sat there going, I got to check this out?
I think it was when I had like grower champagne for the first time. It was nothing like regular Veuve Clicquot, Moet Chandon. Those are all, great houses, but it was so different and had so much character to it that it really like made me kind of like just stop and think about it for a second. Like just the
What is
minerality.
grower champagne, first of all?
So there's many categories according to the government of champagnes. The most common one that we see is called NM, Négociant Manipulant. And some of the stipulations for that category include you can buy grapes, you can buy juice, you can buy wines, and you make a house blend. Mm-hmm. It's not better or worse, it's just the way it is. One of the smaller ones, probably is the smallest categories, is called RM, Récoltant Manipulant. The nickname is grower champagnes. So part of the stipulations for those champagnes include you have to own your own vineyards. You have to farm your own vineyards. You have to make your own wine. You have to bottle your own wine. So while that's
Farm
not
to
necessary,
bottle, essentially, champagne.
so while that's
Exactly.
not necessarily quality determinant, it does say something about artisan handcrafted, right? And so there was originally like maybe 5 or 6, maybe as much as 10 when I first started bringing them to Hawaii that were really good, and now it's growing as more and more people realize that rather than selling their juice to these large houses, I'd like to keep the wine from my property and make my own wine, and so you're seeing a growth of all these grower champagnes, and because of the popularity among sommeliers, there's a market for it. So that's why you're seeing more and more people. They want their name on the label. They don't want to be part of a blend for some large house. So the kind that I would bring to Hawaii. So when we transitioned from French food, which was cream and butter, so rich, fatty sauces, champagne made sense. Krug, all these Veuve Clicquot, they made sense because the bitterness worked well with the fat of cream and butter. But now that we've segued into Hawaii regional cuisine and far more frequently Asian-inspired foods, salty, sweet, spicy food, bitterness gets exaggerated. You don't want bitterness with it unless you like bitterness. So we had to look for other venues, hence the Italian Prosecco. But in the category of champagne, some of these grower champagnes that she enjoys would have tinier bubbles, not so confrontational, and certainly not as bitter or alcoholic in the finish. So it kind of was a transition into contemporizing more the niche of champagne. So when she talks about grower champagnes, she's very specific on what kind she likes, and she has the best that have tiny bubbles. And she met the lady who owns it and makes the wines, and stuff like that. It's just it has a little more meaning than she
And
made
popping
it.
bottles in the club kind of champagne.
So would you say a grower champagne was one of the first?
And then I think also realizing old world versus new world, because when I first started in the restaurant industry, it was like, for a lot of these more corporate companies like Kincaid's, Palomino, CPK. So you see a lot of like the recognized Mondavis and, Opus One and whatever.
Yeah.
But then when we delved into like really tasting and learning about old world wines and just tasting the terroir and where they're from, the sense of place, the kind of rocks that it grew in, that was a really huge aha moment for me. And then just appreciating like the work that it took
From families.
Yes. To
Passed
have
down to
that
the generation.
bottle.
I think, to like everyone that we've interviewed so far, that is a reoccurring aha moment for them. So for anyone that's listening, I would say to encourage just trying to find that aha moment
Yes.
in understanding new versus old world. Because like Dad says, it's like it just opens a box of like, this is the possibility of, and that's what makes you dive into it further,
And it
'Cause-
transports you
Yeah,
and like
sense
to
of
that
place,
place.
yes.
Yes.
But that aha moment of like, okay, this is not a fruit bomb or a
Right.
big California red. I'm tasting a wine from Burgundy and I taste the minerality in it. I taste like a sense of place. That is what's going to take you to the next level
Right.
of your interest, at least.
Yeah, and so was there an aha moment that you had in terms of wine and food?
Yes. So it was actually you gave me a aged cabinet for my birthday one year, and I went home and I hadn't eaten dinner yet.
German Riesling Cabinet.
And I ordered Thai food, And I was just sitting by myself, and that was the only bottle of wine I had. And I was like, oh, I'm all by myself drinking this wine. Oh, well, I'm going to enjoy it. So I popped it open, and I sat like at my table, and then I was like eating, and then I had a sip of the wine, and I was like, oh my gosh. It was like I was by myself, and I was like looking around like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like, I get it. And it's like we'd been tasting wines, so many wines, and pairing them with foods. But when I discovered it like on my own, and I felt that harmony come together, and it finally clicked in my head, I'm like, this is what he's talking about. And I think it almost had to be by myself, because you're not getting influenced by anyone else.
You found it on your own, like you said. Like it was your aha moment, your breakthrough.
Yes. Because so many times when you're at tastings, people are telling you what you're tasting, why it pairs, why it's good. But it's when you experience it on your own.
Experience.
Wow, that's pretty
So
good.
thank you for that.
No. So speaking of back to champagne, you still have a bottle of Jacques Salas?
I do. I'm waiting to drink it with you.
No. When is your 10th anniversary?
Next year.
Okay. You need to have it with your husband on the
and you
anniversary.
and you and Cheryl.
No.
Yes. I've been saving it.
So Jacques Salas is one of the most happening, hardest to get champagne producers out of France. He's a one-man show, whatever. So she has this bottle that she's too stingy to open up for her husband or anybody else. You got to celebrate your husband's.
Well, they gave it to us when we got married, and so we can't have it just us. I'm like, we have to have this with Chuck and Cheryl.
But it's your husband. He's
agrees.
a nice guy.
He agrees with me. We have to have it with you because it's that special. Like we
Just
won't
drink
touch
it with them. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So besides that Jacques Salas in your reefer, you say you have wines more frequently than cocktails. So what are some go-to wines that you have in your reefer?
I drink a lot of rosé, so I love just like Bertrand Gris Blanc. It's really easy to find, or like I love that Clos La Coutal. That like when I have a little heartier food, something like that is
More
is really
savory.
Nice. Yes. I love like Gamay Beaujolais with just like to pair with
anything.
Anything. It's just delicious and easy and.
That's something that just washes the food down, essentially.
Well, I mean, you have to understand, she also works with Chris Ramel, and she also worked with Roberto Viernes, Master Sommelier. So, and she also works for Warren Sean. So, she, the recommendation she's going to get from those three people is on another level, right? I mean, so she's mentioning some highfalutin wine, and she didn't mention Marchigliani, but
that's my favorite.
I was just gonna say that I bought a couple bottles of that from our field the other day.
They have it.
Yeah, our Kailua.
Oh my gosh, I'm
like
gonna drive out to
$21
Kailua.
a
That is
bottle, I
my
think.
favorite.
Yeah.
I love that wine.
so you know that
stashed
kid.
You
that-
can't find it though. That's
No.
why it's like not normally in my refrigerator.
Wait, so can you just spell that out for people that want to get that?
No, don't. If you know,
M-A-R.
you know. Too bad. No. I'm gonna go buy it all right now.
Marquilini, Marchigliani. It's a very light colored rosé from the east coast of the island of Corsica, which is below the southern tip of France. And the importer once wrote me an email that said, "Chuck, this wine is for you. It's like drinking a cloud. It's so light and weightless. And after you swallow, all that's left is perfume." That's how light it is. And it's just this amazing pink wine. And I just wanted to share with you. So Keith Ito, who buys the wines for that location, he works at Vino 2 nights a week. And so we call him the mole because he's always stealing our allocations. But if there's ever a wine
mole.
that if there's ever, he convinces his partner, because Ann and I shifted the days to get deliveries. He convinced his partner, because he was off, to take pictures of what was coming in. And then he would work as salesperson to cockroach a case.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't care, because if he has the passion to go through all that and carry the wine, and especially in this day and age.
Well, especially in a liquor store or a more of a retail setting where you're going to be able to go, and you don't have to go into a restaurant. You can pay retail price for this bottle. Might have more impact than spending 2 times the amount in a restaurant.
So
right?
Melissa and Fred, they saved their time and their money, and every 2 weeks or so, they go an hour down to Kailua, an hour back, just to go there to stock up.
Oh my gosh. See,
Yeah.
I would totally do that too.
I mean, if they carry Marchigliani, are you kidding me? I mean, that's just
I
an
don't even
example.
know how they have it
I
on the
walked
regular.
into there the other day and I was like, holy shit, I bought 3 bottles, like I said, just to stash. Yeah.
That's like a hidden gem. Don't air this, please.
Well,
Seriously, even Warren. Okay, so I went to Warren and Aaron's house like a couple weeks ago, and that bottle you gave me, I took over to their house. I said, "This is my favorite," because Aaron loves rosé as well, and she never tried it. And Warren's like, "Yeah, that's fantastic stuff. I actually have never tried it because we can't keep it in stock, so you can't ever pull any samples." And then he tried it, and he's like, "Wow, that's incredible. It's so just light and just beautiful." I'm like, I know. I'm like, I can't believe I'm bringing a wine you haven't tried. Yes. That's amazing. I was like, it's not from me. It's actually from Chuck. But
That guy is very on it. He's really
Super on
wine.
it.
But to tell you, on a sadder note, it's because of this pandemic and all the restaurants aren't doing the volume. That's why.
These are available.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you guys should take advantage of these kind of wines right now because they're not commonly readily available, right? I mean, so anyway, Chandra, thank you very much for having us. For coming on our show and being part of this thing.
Thank you.
Sharing your
COVID
mana, your aloha, your wisdoms, your insights. It's very enlightening. Hopefully, it's inspiring to some of you out there. If you want, she sets the standard of being a consummate professional that lives her craft. That's why she's so masterful at it all. And she does it from the heart, and that's what makes her truly special. So thank you, Chandra. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope you enjoyed this podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time. Aloha, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
you guys.
bye. Thank you.